If every rifle scope is designed to help you hit the target, then why do military snipers, special forces, hunters, and competitive shooters all use completely different crosshairs? If one design is truly the best, why hasn't the rest of the world simply copied it? The answer isn't about better engineering, it's about solving a completely different problem every time you pull the trigger, so let's break it all down. For centuries, aiming a rifle meant aligning crude iron sights by eye, but as rifles gained the range to shoot further, the human eye couldn't keep up. Marksmen needed magnified, precise telescopic aim to hit distant targets. The earliest solution in the 19th century was the simple crosshair, two completely uniform wires intersecting directly in the center of a glass tube. To make those lines as thin as possible without snapping under the force of recoil, engineers relied on an incredibly strange material, the earliest actual stretched spider silk inside the tube, chosen for its extreme tensile strength. But looking at this diagram of a simple crosshair, a glaring physical flaw emerges. Right at the moment of peak precision, the point where the two lines intersect physically blocks the eye from seeing the target. If you aim perfectly over the bullseye disappears behind the wire. You cannot hit what the tool itself hides. Every modern scope design from military history is a visual machine built to fix this specific paradox and bypass the physical limitations of the human eye. The first logical way to clear the optical center was to remove the intersection altogether. During World War II, German marksmen used the Balkan Reticle. It featured three thick outer posts converging on an entirely open center. The bottom post served as the aiming point, freeing the target from visual obstruction. Later decades brought the Duplex Reticle in. Instead of leaving the center empty, it uses thick outer posts that act as visual arrows, drawing your eye inward before tapering down to a microscopic razor-thin crosshair in the middle. Seeing the target clearly was only half the battle. If a sniper is working with a spotter, they need a precise mathematical language to communicate distance and wind adjustments. Descriptive words spoken out loud are far too slow. To solve this, the US Marine Corps standardized the mil-dot system. This crosshair is marked with uniform dots along the vertical and horizontal axes, spaced exactly 1 mil-radian apart. The math scales linearly. 1 equals exactly 10 centimeters at 100 meters. If a shooter knows the actual physical size of a target, they can estimate its distance entirely in their head by counting how many dots it fills inside the scope. The mil-dot gives spotters and shooters a perfect grid for communication. However, it relies on linear math, and bullets do not travel in straight lines. As a bullet flies through the air, it loses velocity. Gravity pulls it downward on a steep exponential curve. A 10 centimeter drop at 100 meters does not mean a clean 20 centimeter drop at 200. It falls much faster the further it travels. This diagram illustrates the bullet drop compensator, or BDC. Instead of uniform spacing, it uses pre-calibrated horizontal markings below the center. Notice how the gaps widen the lower you go, matching the exponential plunge of a slowing bullet. But there is a strict catch. A BDC only tells the truth for one exact combination of ammunition grain weight, velocity, and altitude. Switch out your ammo type or move to a higher elevation, and those markings no longer line up with reality. At long range, doing the math is required. But in a 15-meter urban close quarters environment, trying to read a grid will get a shooter killed before they even pull the trigger. This led to zero mag magnification designs like the Western Red Dot and the Russian Cobra sight. There are no iron sights to align and no complex reticles. They project a simple floating point of light onto the front glass. The circle dot variant refines this further. It projects a large 65 inut of angle outer ring that frames a human torso at exactly 100 meters away. You frame the target and you pull the trigger. These designs deliberately strip away all long-range mathematical data, optimizing the entire optical for the fraction of a second needed for a biological reaction. But what happens when a sniper operates alone and needs to account for gravity, distance, and target speed entirely within the scope? They need an optic that moves the entire calculation process inside the glass. In 1963, the Soviet Army adopted the PS-1, designed to attach directly onto the SVD Dragunov rifle as a single unified system for lone designated marksmen. Look closely at the lower left corner of this diagram of the PSO1. This is the stometric rangefinder. It's a specialized curve over a straight baseline. By simply framing a human-sized target between the bottom line and the descending curve, the shooter gets an instant distance calculation without touching any external equipment. The American approach took a completely different path with the ACOG Chevron. The tip offers fine aiming while the width of the legs matches human shoulder width at specific distances. It remains one of the most combat-tested optics of the last 3 decades. Then there is the absolute extreme of data density, the Horus Tremor 3. It floods the entire optical field with a vast grid of vertical and horizontal hash marks, built for precision shooting well beyond 1,000 meters. This array allows a sniper to calculate extreme wind shear and moving target speed simultaneously. They simply shift their eye across the grid intersections to fire, never taking their hand off the rifle to touch a physical dial. Packing this much raw data into a single visual field allows a sniper to remain perfectly still, adjusting for variables without breaking their cheek weld to touch a turret. But it requires immense training just to decode what you are looking at. Looking out across the massive landscape of modern tactical equipment, you will see endless variations of these optics resting side by side today. Despite over a century of continuous engineering, no single universal reticle exists. That mathematically dense Horus Tremor 3 grid is distracting and useless when clearing a 15-meter room, and that split-second red dot is entirely blind trying to engage a target at 1,000 meters. The Crosshair serves as a specialized, highly calibrated language between a human and their environment. Mastering an optic doesn't mean searching for the best Crosshair design. It means knowing exactly which physical variable of warfare you need to conquer in that exact fraction of a second.